Shalom Yashala, Shalom. Kala Layamla, Alahaya, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Bahashem, Rakah Kwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who teach well and rule well, who taught me this truth. Peace and salutation to the Akim, the fellow laborers, the hope for the elect, pushing this truth at risk of their own lives through at the four corners of the earth. To the Aquath listening and learning, in sincerity and in truth. Shalom. Yeah. It's your brother Shema from the Pillars of Benjamin Camp here in Toronto with another lesson. And we'll get right into it. It's a couple of articles. 1, 2, 3, 4. Four news articles. All right, this first one right here. Blacklisted news. The U.S. is about to go Louis the 16th. Right? And Louis the 16th was a king of France. Right? On September 3rd, 1783, after nearly a year of excruciating back and forth negotiations, all sides had finally gathered together in Paris to sign a historic peace agreement. It was a pretty important peace deal because the Treaty of Paris, as it is now known, right, secular history, look it up, is what formally ended the American Revolution. And when Great Britain legally recognized the United States as an independent nation, right? Secular history, right? Scriptures. America's birth from Great Britain, right? Which in turn is birth from Rome. Okay, a matter of fact, let's get that. It's in Jeremiah. Jeremiah 50 verse 12. Your mother, right? Great Britain, America the Great came from Great Britain. The American Revolution was gaining independence from Great Britain. Secular history, right? Your mother shall be sore confounded. Confounded mean ashamed. She that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of the nations, America, the hindermost of the nations, shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert, right? And that's ultimately the end game for America the Great. A wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. But her mother, Great Britain, shall be ashamed. Okay? Scriptures say, thee shall hate the whore and burn her with fire. Let's get that. That's in Revelation. Right? And the these in that scripture, these shall hate the whore, is NATO and the EU, Slovakia, EU, right? NATO is the military hand, and NATO is a North American treaty organization, which America is a part of. But NATO and the EU will turn on America the Great. Revelation 17 verse 16. And the 10 horns, the EU, which thou sawest upon the beast, NATO, these shall hate the whore is America, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Right? And how's that going to happen with the missiles? Right? So something's going to tick up. Something's going to transpire to make all these NATO EU nations to turn on America the Great, Babylon the Great. Right? The treaty was signed in Paris because France had been a major supporter of the U.S. war effort. Right? This is secular history once again. France ponied up money to the U.S. for them to fight and gain their independence from Great Britain. And just as soon as the ink was dry, French King Louis XVI ordered his finance minister to prepare an accounting of exactly how much money France had spent on U.S. independence. The result was nothing short of an astonishing more than 1 billion livres, the French dollar at the time, right? To put that number in context, the French treasury's entire annual revenue only amounted to around 200 million livres. So they had basically sunk 5 years' worth of their tax revenue fighting someone else's war. Granted, Britain was still one of France's main rivals, and the French did not care for British King George III, but their American war was simply too costly, and France had already been on very shaky financial footing well before this point. Louis XVI had nearly bankrupted the country a century before. His successor, Louis XV, had to drastically slash expenses and could barely hang on financially. Sound familiar? Then in 1774, just prior to the American Revolution, Louis XVI became king at a time that France was rapidly deteriorating. Right? Sound familiar? Right? Let's get another scripture. It's in Isaiah. Isaiah 14. Isaiah 14, verse 11. And it reads, Thy pomp is brought down to the grave. Your pomp, your arrogancy, your pride. Right? America the Great. Very proud. And the noise of thy viols is a musical instrument. Right? So that mirth spirit, that festival spirit, outdoor cookout spirit. Right? And the noise of thy viols, your music, the worm is spread under thee. The worm is the decay. America the Great's, Babylon the Great's infrastructure is decaying. Their economy is decaying. Right? And the worms cover thee. Right? So they're in a state of deteriorating. Right? Let's go back to this. Read this sentence again. Then in 1774, just prior to the American Revolution, Louis XVI became king at a time that France was rapidly deteriorating. You'd think that with so much economic turmoil at home that he would have focused on his own national interests. In lieu of money, weapons, and ships, he would have instead sent the royal thoughts and prayers to America. But no, lucky for the U.S., Louis XVI courageously fought the American Revolution down to the very last French taxpayer. Only after the war did Louis finally take stock of the situation and realize the truth. America was in a much better position. Britain was bruised but still powerful, yet his own, France, was nearly bankrupt and desperately in need of cash. Not exactly a win-win. Louis XVI was king, but his powers were limited. He was beholden to the legislator called the Estates General, and he couldn't simply decree new taxes without their consent. The king did, however, control the tax collectors, and Louis made sure they had every authority to coerce, harass, and intimidate money out of French citizens. French tax collectors had the authority to walk right into people's homes unannounced, conduct surprise inspections to look for hidden wealth, and walk away with whatever money or property they felt would satisfy the peasant's tax bill. This is actually a pretty common theme throughout history. Governments that are on the ropes, right? And America the Great, Babylon the Great is on the ropes, routinely resort to plundering the savings of their citizens. Several ancient Roman emperors, in fact, from Diocletian to Valentinian III, famously sent ruthless tax collectors to harass their citizens and steal their wealth. Several ancient Chinese dynasties did the same thing. So did the declining Ottoman Empire, right? History repeats itself, man. And these same spirits are back, right? These Roman empires, the first installment of these Roman emperors, today's politicians, today's presidents, these spirits are back. Right, let's get another scripture. James 5. James 5, verse 1. Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you, right? You rich men, talking about these elites, these ruling class elites, these banking families, right? Your riches are corrupted and your garments are moth-eaten, right? Corrupted riches, right? Crime families. That's the history. Look it up. Right? These banking families were crime families, right? Their riches are corrupted. Your gold and silver is cankered. You look at this word cankered, it means rust, right? Roman Empire, they would dilute their uh their uh their money, right? As it lost value, they dilute their gold and their silver as it lost value, right?
Strong's G 2728. Katiao. Katiao.
Right, to rust over, cover with rust, right? So the ancient Roman Empire, they would dilute their money with other metals, right? And it would in turn rust, right? Because gold and silver will not rust, right? So their money had no value. They were trying to stretch their money out, right? Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Ye have heaped treasure together for the last days. And we're in the last days. Verse 4, behold, I hire the laborers who have reaped down your fields. And who are the laborers who've reaped down, who built up America the Great, Babylon the Great? The tribes, all 12, which is of you kept back by fraud, right? They weren't paid, they weren't compensated. They were butt broken, they were hung from trees, they were traded into Spain, into Europe, they were given them smallpox, they were decimated. Crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. Sabaoth means armies, the Lord of armies, right? So the Most High hears, the Most High is hearing the cries of the laborers, the tribes. Back into this, where were we? Right here. Significantly ramping up tax collection efforts is typically a hallmark of an economy, an empire in decline, right? And these Babylonians just made an announcement right here. So we can't be too surprised that in its latest legislative bonanza, the U.S. government is setting aside $80 billion for the IRS tax collection efforts, right? They made an announcement, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, $80 billion to pump into the IRS organization. To collect, to claw back money. Why? Because they need money, man. Right? The economy is broken, man. They're calling the bill, of course, the Inflation Reduction Act. And that's what they've named it. This is pure comedy. The legislation will do no such thing. Why would inflation, which in part was caused by excessive government spending, magically dissipate because of more government spending? It's ludicrous. But inflation aside, front and center in the legislation is $80 billion in funding for the IRS, primarily to step up its tax collection and enforcement efforts. To put that number in context, the annual budget of the IRS is $12 billion. So even though that $80 billion will be leaked out over a period of several years, it constitutes a major increase in the IRS budget. The entire idea is based on a bizarre notion known as a tax gap. This is the difference between the amount of tax the government collects versus the amount the government thinks they should collect. In other words, the tax gap represents how much they believe people are cheating, and the estimates vary wildly from $100 billion per year to a whopping $1 trillion per year. Frankly, these numbers have always seemed to me like they were completely made up. Scripture just came to mind, Salakia. It's in Proverbs. Proverbs 22, verse 7. The rich ruleth over the poor. Right? And who's the poor? You Israelites. So-called indigenous, so-called Latino, so-called Negro. And the borrower, right? Who's the borrower? The Israelites. Is servant to the lender, right? Who's the lender? These so-called, these Salakia, not so-called. These ruling class elites. These banking families, right? And right now they're about to try and claw back. I'm not going to read any more of this. Right? Trying to claw back money. Dump the IRS. They're going to get aggressive with it. All kinds of audits are going to come out, right? The middle class is going to be decimated, right? Right here. Bear in mind, this is all brought to you by the same people who are shoveling your tax dollars out the door to Ukraine, $50 billion at a time. It's very Louis the 16th of them, right? Right. The history repeats itself, man. All of these trends, the cannibalistic surge in tax authorities, the anti-productive regulations, the economic scarcity mentality, are all hallmarks of an empire in decline, right? And I want to get another scripture. Things are only going to get worse, right? Ecclesiastes 1. Ecclesiastes 3. Ecclesiastes 1, verse 9. The thing that hath been is that which shall be done, right? So that which was done in the past is the thing that will be done again, right? And that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun, right? So the same spirits, those spirits are back, man. You know what I mean? And these things are gonna you know, these things are gonna make people go ham. This is another article right here. People are gonna lose their mind. $15 French fries and $18 sandwiches. Inflation hits New York, right? This is unsustainable, right? And the people are gonna lose it, man. Let's close out. Isaiah 19, and this is our prophecy. Isaiah 19, verse 2. And it reads, and I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight every one against his brother, right? America the Great, Babylon the Great. Spiritual Egypt, spiritual Sodom, right? The vibration of Egypt, ancient Egypt, the vibration of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? America. And they shall fight everyone against his brother and everyone against his neighbor, right? It's going to be civil unrest out here, man. City against city and kingdom against kingdom, right? This it's all unsustainable, man. Right? People are already you see podcasts of people calling in the podcast freaking out, all this money getting dumped out to push a war, and people are starving and they can't afford to live. Right? Another scripture came to mind. Right? So these people, right? So now the government gonna come in and squeeze the middle class, squeeze them, and tax them, and say you need to give us this, you need to give us that. They're gonna lose their mind. Americans, Babylonians. But it's our prophecy. Haggai 1 verse 6. Ye have sown much and bring in little. Right? You work, work, work. Paycheck is skinny. Right? Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but ye are not filled. Right? Not enough food. The money can't stretch. Right? With drink, with the drink, Salakia. But ye are not filled with the drink. Ye clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages and put it into a bag with holes, right? So as soon as your money comes in, it's gone. You got to pay this bill, that bill, this bill, that bill. Not enough. You're delinquent on your light bill, your electricity. You're delinquent on you don't have enough for groceries. You can't put new sneakers on 7-year-old Johnny, right? Not enough money. And now they're gonna try and audit. They're pumping $80 billion. $80 billion. Yep. In funding for the IRS, right? And the cost of living's out the roof. $15 French fries, man. You see me? $18 sandwiches, right? Food lines, food banks struggling to meet increased demand for food aid, may not have enough resources for the fall and winter. This place is through. Let's get another scripture. Jeremiah 50. This place is done. Jeremiah 51, verse 7. Behold, Salakia, Babylon hath been a golden cup, right? The Most High set up America the Great, right? Right? Matter of fact, let's get that. It's in Daniel 4. Daniel 4. Daniel 4, verse 17. This matter is by the decree of the watchers, and by the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know, right, here on this earth, that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, right? The Most High ruleth, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. Whoever is set up and in rulership, the Most High set it up and gave it to them. And setteth up over it the basis of men. The basis of men. Who's the basis of men? Esau, Edom. Job 9 and 24 says the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. Right? This is there. The basis of the men, the basis of men is in rule. Job 9 verse 24. And the Most High set them up. Job 9 and 24. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. Right? Esau, Edom. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. Right? And he painted over the images of the judges. Yahushai, the angels. He blasphemed the Most High. Sold the world a lie. Put his face up. If not, if he didn't do it, where and who is he? Right? Esau, Edom, man. The blasphemer, the man-stealer, the liar, the thief. Right? Where were we? Jeremiah 51 verse 7. Babylon hath been a golden cup, right? America the Great. The Most High set them up, put them in this rulership. In the Lord's hand, all caps, Yahweh, that made all the earth drunken, right? Babylon went forth feeding his philosophy, the wine being his philosophy, feeding the world, drinking off the world his wine, which is his philosophy, right? The nations, all these other nations, other countries, other rulerships, have drunken of her wine, her philosophy. Therefore, the nations are mad, right? Verse 8. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed, right? And we're seeing her demise, right? Howl for her, howl, cry, lament. Take balm for her pain. Bomb's a healing agent. And what are some examples of the healing agents of America the Great, Babylon the Great? Giveaways, stimulus checks, rebates, right? Take balm for her pain, and her pain is her economic woes, her citizens under hardships, right? If so be, she may be healed, right? But she's not gonna be healed, man. No amount of stimulus gonna heal her. This is our prophecy, right? All this is coming to pass, right? Food banks not meeting their increased demand for food because of lack of resources, inflation, right? And the government putting the squeeze on you now. Shalom.